The murder of Jason Corbett, a tragic tale of violence, deception, and family betrayal. Jason Corbett was an ordinary man living in the quiet town of Limerick, Ireland, until his life took a tragic turn that would not only devastate his family, but also attract media attention across the globe. A loving father devoted to his children, Jason's life was upended by a violent and inexplicable crime, his brutal murder in his own home in North Carolina in 2015. The aftermath would lead to a courtroom drama, a family torn apart, and a case that raised questions about justice, family loyalty, and the extent of violence that could be justified in the name of self-defense. A new beginning in America. Jason Corbett's story began in Ireland, where he lived with his two children, Jack and Sarah, following the tragic death of his first wife, Mags, in 2006. Jason, deeply affected by the loss, took on the sole responsibility of raising his children, focusing on providing for them and ensuring they lived a happy and stable life. In 2011, seeking a fresh start, Jason moved with his children to North Carolina, USA, where he worked hard to settle into a new life. It was in North Carolina that Jason met Molly Martens, an American woman who had worked as an au pair for his children. Their relationship developed quickly, and in 2011, they married. Molly, who was much younger than Jason, seemed to bond well with his children, and Jason appeared to be moving forward with his life. For the most part, the couple appeared to have a solid marriage despite their age difference and the complexities of blending their families. However, things took a dark turn on the evening of August 2nd, 2015, when Jason was found dead in the family home in a violent and horrifying manner. Jason's body was discovered by the police after Molly and her father, Thomas Martens, a former FBI agent, called emergency services to report an incident at their house. The story they told was one of self-defense. They claimed that Jason had become violent and had attacked Molly. In the heat of the confrontation, they claimed they were forced to defend themselves. According to their account, Molly had struck Jason with a baseball bat, and Thomas had hit him with a brick paver, leading to his fatal injuries. The police arrived to find Jason's body in the home, with multiple severe head injuries from the bludgeoning. The police and investigators were immediately skeptical of the self-defense claims. Despite the assertions of Molly and Thomas, there was evidence to suggest that Jason had not been the aggressor in the altercation. The scene appeared too brutal, and the weapons used, a baseball bat and a brick paver, seemed excessive for an act of self-defense. What followed was a series of twists and turns that would lead to one of the most controversial trials in recent American history. As the investigation into Jason's murder began, authorities quickly started to piece together a troubling narrative. The couple's account seemed increasingly unreliable. Investigators found no evidence of an immediate threat or attack from Jason toward his wife or father-in-law, but they did uncover signs that the relationship between Jason and Molly had been strained. In the months leading up to Jason's death, there were reports of domestic issues. Molly had allegedly become increasingly concerned about Jason's behavior, with some family members suggesting that Molly had become more controlling and distrustful. The relationship had reportedly become toxic, with Jason feeling isolated and unhappy. Yet there was no indication that Jason had been violent or dangerous in the moments leading up to his death. Further examination of the crime scene revealed that Jason's injuries were not consistent with the self-defense story that Molly and Thomas had told. The sheer brutality of the attack suggested that the assault had been carried out with intent, rather than in the heat of an argument. As the investigation continued, authorities grew more suspicious of the Martens narrative. Molly and Thomas Martens were arrested and charged with second-degree murder. The case quickly became a media spectacle, with the public divided over whether they had truly acted in self-defense or if they had killed Jason in cold blood. What followed was a highly publicized trial which presented conflicting views on the nature of the crime and the motivations behind it. The prosecution argued that Molly and Thomas had planned the murder, suggesting that they had acted out of frustration or anger. They pointed to the lack of physical evidence to support the self-defense claim and emphasized the severity of the attack. The defense, on the other hand, maintained that Molly and Thomas had acted in self-defense after Jason became violent. They argued that they were in fear for their lives and had no other choice but to defend themselves using whatever means they could. In 2017, after a long and intense trial, Molly and Thomas Martens were found guilty of second-degree murder. The conviction was a shock to many, but the legal battle was far from over. Molly and Thomas appealed the verdict, and the case would go through several twists and turns in the legal system. In 2021, after years of legal back and forth, the North Carolina Supreme Court ruled that crucial evidence had been excluded during the trial. The ruling effectively overturned the convictions of Molly and Thomas Martens. In a stunning turn of events, the court concluded that the trial had not been conducted fairly, leading to the decision to vacate the guilty verdicts. In 2023, after much legal maneuvering, both Molly and Thomas Martens agreed to a plea deal, pleading guilty to voluntary manslaughter in exchange for a reduced sentence. This deal resulted in them each serving a sentence of 51 to 74 months in prison. However, with time served and the plea bargain in place, both were released after serving only a few years in prison, a decision that was met with widespread criticism from Jason's family and the public. Jason Corbett's family, particularly his siblings and children, were devastated by the outcome of the case. They felt that justice had not been served and that the brutal murder of their loved one had been minimized through legal loopholes in the controversial plea deal. They expressed deep frustration over the fact that Molly and Thomas Martens were allowed to plead guilty to manslaughter instead of facing a full murder conviction. The Corbett family remained vocal in their pursuit of justice, continuing to speak out against the lenient punishment and the betrayal they felt at the hands of Molly and Thomas Martens. Jason's children, Jack and Sarah, had lost their father in the most horrific way possible and were left with emotional scars that would last a lifetime. The story of Jason Corbett is a heartbreaking reminder of how domestic relationships can devolve into violence and how the pursuit of justice can sometimes become overshadowed by legal technicalities. For Jason's family, the loss of their loved one will never be forgotten, and they remain committed to preserving his memory and fighting for true justice. Jason Corbett's life was tragically cut short by the violence of those he loved and trusted most. The case surrounding his murder remains one of deep sorrow and unanswered questions, leaving a permanent mark on the lives of those who knew him and those who followed his story. Despite the legal battles and plea deals, the pain of losing Jason Corbett will resonate for years to come.